Happy New Year! Let's see how last year's trends are going to affect this year's market. I'm Tony with Clarkson Santoro, and this is our real estate update for the week of Friday, January 5th. We understand that selling or buying a house is stressful and can be confusing. We do these weekly videos so that you can know how the market is affecting you as a homeowner thinking about selling or as someone looking for a house to call home. We usually go over weekly market performance and how the broader trends are affecting the market. But to start the year, I wanted to recap the big trends that we saw last year. The biggest trends that stood out all year were the overall lack of inventory, the dramatic increase in interest rates, and the stability in home values despite the higher interest rates. Starting off like we usually do, let's talk about the inventory levels. This year has seen very flat and consistent levels much lower than previous years in San Ramon. We typically see an average of about 40 to 50 homes on the market throughout the year, with inventory climbing in the spring and summer and then falling off in the winter and fall and winter months. This year was much different. As you can see on this chart, we haven't had 40 homes on the market at once the entire year. In fact, the highest points didn't even reach 35 homes, and it's been a pretty consistently flat line. We've hovered right about 50% of our normal inventory levels all year. The result of a prolonged low inventory this year was that we only had a total of 366 single-family homes sell this year. That is a 2% turnover rate of total housing inventory in San Ramon. When you compare that turnover rate to the past 25 years, you can see that is less than half the housing turnover rate that we typically see. Here we are in this last year, 2023, at just around 2%, and historically we don't ever drop below 4% of total housing inventory in San Ramon turning over. We believe that this lack of housing turnover is unsustainable, and that there will be an influx of resale listings coming on the market in the next few years to make up for the slow 2023 market. There are a couple of contributing factors that led to this slow year. One of those is interest rates, which we will talk about in a second, and then the other key factor is taxes. There are two angles of attack that taxes have on a homeowners who are desiring or considering selling. The first is property taxes, which are paid based on the purchase price of a home in California. Because of Prop 13, those taxes cannot increase more than 2% each year, even though the underlying value of those homes increases significantly faster. To demonstrate why that would affect a homeowner's desire to sell, let's do some quick math. Let's say you bought a house in 2016 at the average sales price of homes in San Ramon at that time, which was $750,000. At the tax rates of that time, your annual tax bill would be just under $9,000 for the year. If you take that number out, increasing by 2% every year up until last year, your tax rate for the year of 2023 on that property would be $11,200, assuming you haven't done any significant upgrades or improvements requiring permits, which would reassess the value somewhat. So all things being equal on that house maintained well, your property taxes from 2016 to 2023 would have risen about $2,300. If, however, you were to buy a home now, let's say you wanted to sell that home today or for 2023 prices this past month, the average home now is selling in San Ramon for $1,825,000. If you were to sell your home that you bought in 2016 now, assume you would get the average sales price because that home should be still the average value, market value, and then buy a comparable or even better home, but let's just work with comparable numbers. Let's say you wanted to buy now a home for the same average price. Your tax bill would now be $20,000 roughly on that property, meaning you're almost doubling your property taxes just by trading a similar house for similar house with today's prices. That significant increase in property taxes means that some sellers don't want to transition from one house to the other. The potential increase in property taxes keeps some homeowners from selling if they're staying in this area. The one caveat to this tax is that homeowners over the age of 55 can take their current property tax rate and apply it to a new home, as long as the new home is comparable or cheaper than the home that they're selling. But even those over the age of 55 still have to consider the second tax, which is affecting our inventory, and that is capital gains taxes. Using that same house that we just talked about, the $750,000 house that you bought in 2016, assuming you were to sell that now for $1.8 million, you're seeing about $1,050,000 in capital gains, even after deducting real estate fees, cost for improvements, and the $500,000 exemption for married couples. You are still left with upwards of $400,000 in taxable income, or which essentially is a $100,000 tax bill. These two tax considerations are keeping a lot of homeowners from even considering selling. The other reason, and arguably the bigger reason, why inventory stayed so low was the increase in mortgage rates. That is also one of the main trends and storylines surrounding our housing market this entire year. We've been paying close attention to these interest rates and talking about them a lot this past year in our weekly updates. So this section won't be quite as in-depth. But a quick overview is that since 2014, we have seen interest rates stay well below 5%. And then in 2020, in a response to the pandemic, rates dropped more dramatically, down to about 3% on average. Everyone who bought a home during the 2020 and 2022 market were able to lock in rates well below 4%. And even homeowners that didn't buy during that time were able to refinance to lock in those historically low rates. Then, at the end of the quarter one in 2022, rates skyrocketed up to 7% in just 10 months, which was the single largest change in mortgage rates in our nation's history. They have hovered in the 6 to 7% range over the past year, climbing as high as 7.8 in September, which was a 20-year high. Homeowners have been reticent to give up their low mortgage rates, which has played the biggest role in the low number of homes sold in San Ramon this year. Even with what seems like nearly insurmountable headwinds on the housing market, the last theme I wanted to focus on for last year is stability. At the end of 2022, property values were on a steep decline from their peak in late April. There was a lot of naysaying and fear-mongering that went along with that trend, with a lot of people claiming that 2023 would see a huge crash in the housing market. But as you can see from this chart, that didn't turn out to be the case. The year started, here's our decrease at the end of 2022. The year started in the $1.5 million range, but prices quickly stabilized and we saw a relatively neutral market the rest of the year. It's a pretty flat trend line with a few ups and downs here and there, relatively flat though. A theme we have hammered in these weekly updates all year was that lower priced homes were still selling quickly with multiple offers and often selling over asking. The higher price ranges of homes did suffer a little, but overall home values held firm this year, with what I would call a modest appreciation in value. The interest rates definitely kept home values in check, but the lack of inventory was able to buoy values and keep them from dropping significantly in the face of those interest rates. So here we are at the start of a new year. How can major themes and trends from last year help us prepare for the 2024 housing market? I, for one, expect to see a larger volume of homes sold this year. There are a lot of external variables that we can't really predict. Will the two ongoing wars continue to inflame conflict? How will this year's elections affect the economy? Who wins the elections this year? How does the Federal Reserve approach interest rates? A lot of things can change over the year, but like I said, I assume we will see a larger volume of inventory this year. And if interest rates do come down more, I expect to see home values increase more rapidly than they did this year. Whatever this year brings, I do know that Bill and I are here to help guide you through the very confusing and often stressful process of selling your house or buying a home. If you are considering a move this year, contact us to avoid the stress and confusion. Thank you for joining me on this first weekly update of the new year. We hope the summary and commentary helped you understand how our market is impacting your options. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you can stay informed on how the market is shaping up this year. Happy New Year, have a safe weekend, and we'll see you next week with a new update.